So after considerable trouble, the serpentine belt is now reinstalled. I had to actually look up the routing of the belt because it's such a crazy, complicated way that they do it for these ones that have air conditioning and power steering. But it's all on there, and I checked that it's in all of the ribbed pulleys correctly, not crooked and not off a tooth, because that would not be good. Just going to chew up the belt. So we are finally done with the accessories for now. Like I said, we're going to have to do something with the power steering pump in not too long. I have been watching the fluid level and it hasn't been going down noticeably, but it's definitely leaking. And of course now we have the problem with the tensioner mounting, so that's going to be fun as well, but what can you do? I'm hoping now that we've done that you can still get the top cover in here, I'm sure, but you never know. Something like that. Cool. Actually, I'm going to put this on for now because I don't want any dirt going in here while I'm working on the whole back side of the engine, the exhaust cooler, the EGR, the intake ports, the intake manifold, the turbo, you name it. So, let's leave that for now, and we'll quickly put the power steering, bring this closer, power steering reservoir and coolant reservoir back in place where they go, right about there. And then this part of the engine will be mostly done. The other thing I just remembered as well that we're still going to do is change the steel water pipe. So while we've got the exhaust cooler off and those hoses are already disconnected, we'll mess around to try and get the water pipe changed as well, because if that lets go at a future date, it's going to be a lot harder to change than it would be right now. So right, so I gotta remember what side this goes on. I think it goes out there because it goes in the intake pipe. So that one is actually for, is that one for that? These go, yeah, it is. So these fuel lines are in the way apparently. That's where the power steering reservoir goes. So I guess ultimately we could do that. Where's the coolant reservoir at? Okay, so let's put this in here first. And the problem always, of course, is, oh, that has to go underneath that, I think. I think. Get out of the way. Has to go under there. And our clamp is here. So this goes on here. Come on. And I gotta figure out what angle it needs to be on so that it's not being twisted once it's mounted down. So the long, I believe it's an M6, doesn't say, but I'm pretty sure it's an M6 bolt that holds the power steering reservoir in, and that goes into that second hole in the little brace bracket that's on the engine mount body piece there. So this goes through there, and they're saying 7 foot-pounds for that, and then the screws that hold the coolant reservoir are just Phillips, so you just do whatever you can on those. But one of them, or no, both of them are into plastic threaded inserts, so again, don't go crazy, otherwise you will strip it. So yeah, we'll buzz these in here quick and plug everything back in that's supposed to be. The plug for the coolant is there. and the hose for the overflow can go in there as well. Alright, so that fun is all done. Power steering reservoir is in place and torqued. And coolant reservoir is in place and tightened. And don't do what I did. Remember to put the squeeze clamp back on the lower hose before you mount the reservoir, otherwise you can't get to it. And then the overflow slash drawback line is connected now as well. I'll just leave the cap loose because we're not going to put coolant in it yet anyways, because we still have to do the steel water pipe. So let's now get the, I'll get the EGR, let's go back to, get the EGR dismounted from the car because it has to be completely cleaned and overhauled anyways. Not only is it chocked full of don't do that, of sludge, oh come on, carbon and oil of course, but our butterfly that's supposed to be connected to the shaft in there for the emergency shutdown diaphragm is just floating, so I have to figure out what we're doing with that. I don't know if that shaft is supposed to come out of there or not. If it can come out, maybe we can get the sheared off screws out of the shaft, put new screws in and put the butterfly back on. Otherwise I think we're just going to run without the butterfly for now, but we got to do these stupid factory squeeze clamps to get it off, get the lines off it, and get it out of the way for now, and then get the, you guys can't really see it, the exhaust cooler here, get it off the car so that I can fight with that one bolt that we can't get undone. And then while all that stuff's out of the way, we'll then tackle the steel water pipe, which comes around the back and around the front of the engine. Get that out of the way, and then we can finally start to work on the intake ports themselves and start working towards getting the turbo put back on. Alright, so I got the EGR off, wasn't too bad. All of those vacuum lines though are going to need to be replaced. They're pretty cheesy. Particularly this one that goes into the actual diaphragm itself, and I can't even get it off of there. It's just ripping the cord, so that's going to be fun. And of course cleaning out my floppy butterfly and a little better look at that now. It's not as thick as it looks, but definitely gummed up a bit. And yeah, we got the intercooler, not the intercooler, let's try that again. The exhaust cooler off. And so this cap screw is the one I was able to get loose before. And it's this one on the back side here that the internal hex is oversized now from shale. And I even tried the socket bolt extractors on the outside with the torch heating the snot out of it, and I still couldn't get it undone. So I'm hoping that if I pull this one cap screw out here again, that I might be able to make it crack loose just by twisting it maybe, and potentially maybe hitting it with a hammer gently. If we can make either the bolt crack loose from the flange or the threads crack loose from the cooler, then we can start to actually do something. But either way, I think we're into maybe cutting the head off of this bolt or drilling it out potentially, and then I can get the side pipe off here, and then hopefully get vice grips and the torch on the stud and hopefully get it out. Otherwise we're gonna have to find another cooler, I guess. So yeah, lots of fun. So I'll figure out what I'm gonna do with that, set something up, and then we'll carry on with that. So I guess we're just gonna try drilling the head off or out first, and if we can get it to the point where we can break the pipe off of the cooler, then great. Then we can use the torch and the vice grips again and try and get the threaded part out of the cooler itself. So that'll be plan A here, and we'll see where we get to. So that's got the head drilled out, and I think all that's left attached there is the washer. Yep, there's the washer. And no damage whatsoever to the flange, which is perfect. And now we've got maybe a good 1/4 of an inch, probably only, of stud to get a hold of with the vice grips, and use the torch and hopefully get it to come out of there would be good. Gasket here, which we'll get a new one of. Alright, so let's try to get this stud out of here now. And we'll see how that goes. There we have it, folks. Torches work wonders if you can get everything released, and there's not even anything wrong with those threads. It's not going to focus for me, of course. This. Anyway, there's not even anything wrong with the threads that were in the flange itself. It was probably mostly a case of the head was so badly corroded to the other pipe that I took off first that it wouldn't crack loose and let the threads actually turn, because that wasn't too bad at all with heat to crack it loose. So that takes care of that at least. So all we got to do now, as far as this cooler goes, is get some better bolts for it, some newer bolts or different style perhaps, and stay, probably not. Nope, of course not. And then new gaskets, and they're all back together. Call it good. So I guess next thing here, we'll try and get the metal water pipe replaced. I've got a brand new one here to put in. The biggest problem will be making sure the fitting in the block underneath the injection pump is clean, so that the new pipe and O-ring will actually seal. But so there is a, if I do this too, there is a, see that wet, rusty looking, can't get it to focus, cap screw above the shiny bolt there. That's one of the, there you go, mounting cap screws for the pipe. And then the other one is right down, right there, behind the tab of the clamp is, I think it's a 10 mil. Those are the only two bracket mounts holding the pipe in place. And then there's that water pipe down there, that one there, and I think the only other one is the one off the back there that goes to the heater core. I might move some of these other hoses out of the way just to make it easier to access, but that's where we're headed next. So I will fumble my way through that. Oh, I was going to show here most of these plug connectors here. This is all these brackets, that's all the water pipe still. So these plugs should be able to just pop out of the brackets there and get them out of the way, which will hopefully allow us to get the water pipe up and out of there a little easier. So let's dig into that and see how nasty it's going to be. We have to take the turbo feed oil feed line off anyways to replace it, and it'll also make it a lot easier to do this coolant pipe with it off, so we'll go ahead and take that off as well. It's just this banjo bolt to the oil filter and cooler housing. The other end of it is already twisted off, and I believe I already took out the fasteners for the clamps, so it should be free to come out of there. So the cap screw that's on the bottom part of the water pipe there is actually an 11mm head, or at least that's what it appears to be with all the shale. Well, that was just absolutely horrible. I never want to do those ever again. An absolutely disgustingly horrible design. And probably to do it, quote, properly, you have to strip a whole pile more stuff off the engine for absolutely no reason. So, not doing that. But anyways, the water pipe is out. You can't really tell what kind of shape they port into the water pump casting is. It's got some shale across it, but it doesn't look like it has anything. That's actually the thermostat there too. Doesn't look like it has any bad shale or debris actually in the hole. I wish the light would sit somewhere that I could see. So hopefully, just do a really minor sop up with it. And then we should be able to put the new pipe in, I think. Which is going to be, I'm sure, equally as much of a pain in the ass as getting the old one out was. Get out of there. See, it doesn't look too bad at all. I really wish this wiring wasn't in my face. But it won't stay out of the way, of course. That would make too much sense. Well, all the paint is flaked off of the engine block. Lovely. Anyway, successfully put dirt into the water jacket. Okay, try a little cleanup. You can actually almost see what I'm looking at there, where the orange is in the hole. So I'll just do a little cleanup with a screwdriver and a shop towel here just to make sure there's no loose debris. Then the fun is going to be getting the other pipe in there without getting the end full of dirt and the O-ring all destroyed, so that we can put it together and it might actually maybe seal. Maybe. Perhaps. We'll see. So that was horrible as expected. What probably couldn't be seen there was I got the pipe in most of the way to try not to get the new seal and everything covered in rust or dirt. So what I did behind this that the camera probably couldn't see was put the new seal on, which is kind of like almost like a rectangular profile O-ring with rounded corners. And it sits in the, actually I can show it this right here, that part is the O-ring. That is rubber, as old as it is now. This will be the original pipe, I'm sure. So I put a new one of those in the new pipe, and I also coated the whole thing in coolant before I tried to push it in. And of course it wouldn't just push in nicely by hand with a little bit of wiggling and twisting like it should. So I did use a block of wood pushing on the bracket, not hitting on the pipe that you're going to then collapse, and then you got a coolant restriction problem. So I hit with the block of wood again to not damage it on the edge. I might have twisted that bracket still a little bit because it took a ridiculous amount of force to make the pipe fitting go into the block, even with lubrication on it, but it is a new seal, so hopefully that means it's not going to leak. But there are no guarantees. I'm not holding my breath at all. And you just got to make sure that all the wires end up in the right place. And if you end up with a wire pinched on the wrong side and you finally got it in, then you got to take it back out. That's going to be a bad time. So I believe all the wires are in the right zone here. And hopefully none of them are damaged because they got pulled on a fair bit because it's such a ridiculous thing to try and fight. But yeah, it's in there. As far as I can tell, the seal went in all the way. Didn't roll or bind or anything, but really no way to know and there's really no way to see. So hopefully it doesn't leak. So I'm going to put the 2 cap screws in that hold the pipe in place so that that seal doesn't get disturbed anymore. And then we can start to put the hoses back on and the brackets back on for the electrical. And then once all the hoses are done up, I guess minus our exhaust cooler, which we can put back in the circuit, we can actually put some coolant back in it so that that'll start to bubble down, because it sometimes takes a while to get all the air pockets out, so that by the time we're ready to actually run it, the coolant will be all done. So yeah, we'll put those 2 fasteners back in with some anti-seize, and then slowly button it back up with all the hoses and wires. So I think that is the metal water pipe all wrapped up now. I put the 2 mounting cap screws back in and tightened them just by hand. I think I have put all of the electrical, what would you call them, brackets and plugs all back on the way they were. Minus, I didn't put that one back on, don't really care. That bundle's stiff enough that it's not going to vibrate around too much. And I think all of the hoses are on with clamps. The only one that isn't secured on the engine that we took apart originally is this one, because I don't know what angle it needs to be on to match up with the cooler at the back. Once the cooler is installed, then that can be positioned and clamped. Otherwise, I think we are done up here, other than, of course, finishing up the valve cover and the vacuum pump, and then the vacuum diaphragm, which is over there, can come back to its bracket here. And that's about it. Oh, and we should put in the new turbo feed line here before it gets any more cluttered, I think. Now, it might be smart to wait on that until we're done cleaning the intake ports, though, because it's probably just going to be in the way. But I don't want to forget that, because it'll be even harder. Actually, I probably should have put it in before I put some of the hoses and electrical back, but it shouldn't be too bad with it still stripped down this far. So before we go any further with up the front here, get the intake port cleaning done, and then if we have a clean intake to put on, then that can probably go on, which will let us mount the exhaust cooler again, and then we can get all those hoses finished up. And once that's all in there, the turbo oil feed line can go on, because the next thing to go on after that then is the turbo itself. So I think that's the next step now, is to spend a bit of time on the intake manifold ports to the cylinder. They've got some sludge in them, and if we're going to be starting fresh with a clean intake manifold, clean EGR, new turbo, whatever, then we want to do that. I don't know if I can show what we're trying to do here. There's not much in the intake ports, but it's maybe worth a little bit of attention, just to, again, make sure we're starting fresh with no buildup. As soon as you have a little bit of buildup, then everything gets stuck to it and it just goes from there. So we're going to try and start as fresh as possible. Maybe spend a little bit of time on the vacuum pump just to clean it up a bit, although I know it's probably going to leak again anyways, even if I put another new O-ring in it. I just put that O-ring in when we did the rear main seal job, which was not that long ago. That was a year ago this past winter, I guess. So it hasn't been that long, and it's been leaking anyway. So it's probably going to leak no matter what. But it would be nice for it to be slow. I'm okay with some oil leaking down onto the block to keep it from rotting, but if you have too much, then not only are you losing oil, but you're smelling burning oil all the time, which is not cool. So anyway, that's the plan.